Okay, so it's Diana back from the Village Fabric Shop with the next part of your double 9 patch Learning to Quilt in Quarantine project. You've got all of your shapes traced and cut out, okay, lined, ready to sew, and today we're going to start our sewing. You're going to need to do 10 rows of 3 squares with the medium on the outside and the light in the middle. And you're going to need to make 5 that have the medium or the dark on the inside and the lights out here on the outside. Okay. In order to do this, normally you would use a coordinating blending color of thread, but I'm going to use a much darker, this is a dark blue, so that you have a good chance to see it on camera. You're going to need a few pins. Here's my sewing kit, remember? I'll put my thread that I'm actually using today in there. Okay, sewing needles, a couple of pins. You're going to need these. I'm going to grab this sewing needle and my thread. Okay, there are tips and tricks all along here. Before I go to cut my thread off, I'm going to thread the needle, and the trick here is to hold the thread, hold the needle, so that you can see through the eye of the needle. Now this needle is fairly small eye, so I'm not sure if you'll be able to see through it on camera. At any rate, the angle is going to be different. This end of this thread is fuzzy and giving me a problem, so I'm going to cut it off at a slight angle like that. And I'm going to move my needle around till I can see through it. And of course, whenever you're filming something or doing it in front of an audience, it gives you a hard time, but there it is. Now I'm going to pull out enough thread, go from the needle to my elbow. No longer than that, you don't need it. And I have a fairly good length tail there so that my needle doesn't unthread on me. Now, this is my favorite quilter's knot. Okay, I'm holding the needle with the point poking out. I have the long end of the tail in my hand with about 3/4 of an inch to an inch or so of thread sticking out. I'm going to make those points, kiss, and then go in deeper. I'm going to grab with my hand that's holding the needle, same 2 fingers. I'm going to grab that end so it's held in there. I'm going to wrap around 2 or 3 times around the point of the needle, and then I'm going to pull the needle out without letting go of the wraps. You'll feel it in your fingers, and it'll give you a nice little knot down at the bottom end. We call it kissing and hugging. It makes for a very nice knot. And if I use my fingernail, I can see exactly how much leftover thread at the end of it I have. And I will trim that off to about 1/8 of an inch or so. So that's my threaded needle. Then I'm going to take my first 2 pieces of fabric that I'm going to sew together. Okay, here's my light. Here's my medium. They need to be sewn together along this line. To do it, I'm going to turn them like I'm closing a book, right sides together. Now you're looking at the back of your fabric. That's Jake. I'm going to take a pin and put it right through the crosshairs of that medium fabric. I'm going to then take a look on the back of these pairs and make sure that the point is coming directly through the crosshairs on the other fabric. Okay, there it is. There it is. And then I'm going to pivot the pin and hold it in place. I'm going to take my threaded needle now, go through the crosshairs on the medium, and oh gee, look at that, it's right close to the crosshairs. I'm going to adjust to the crosshairs on the piece on the back, and now I'm going to start sewing. You notice it's a scooping motion. My needle is always going to be up mostly on the top of the thread, on the top of the piece I'm working on. The tails, all this excess is going to be up on the top of the thread on the top of the pieces where I can see them. Right on the line, and I'm going to scoop another little piece. I can flip it over and see the light hitting the needle, that it's right on the line, and I'm going to pull through. Okay, it's a scooping stitch. You want them to be even. And when you get comfortable with the scooping stitch, you can do multiple stitches at one time. Now you see there, it's a little off from the line. I'm going to pull it out before I've pulled my thread all the way through and repeat. Get it? That's better. And I can do about 1 inch's worth. You want these to be about 8 stitches visible in 1 inch space. You want them to be even, and you want them to be right on the line on both sides of your work. Now when you get all the way to the other end, okay, you're not going to go all the way to the edge of the piece of fabric. You're going to go right to that point where your needle goes in, where your pin rather comes into the fabric. That point, pull your pin out, put it into a pin cushion or back into your little sewing kit. Don't leave it loose on the table, especially if you have pets around or like to be barefoot. Uncontrolled pins and needles are dangerous. Okay, but you're going to pull through right at the corner. Then you're going to take another little stitch right over where you were, with the needle coming out right at the crosshairs. Wrap your working thread 2 or 3 times around the point of that needle. Pull it up so it's snug against where the needle comes out of the fabric. Hold it with your thumb and pull. Then you can trim off, leave about 1/4 inch of thread, and you have your 2 pieces sewn together. I'm just going to sort of pinch that open with my hand, and then we're going to go and put the next piece on. Okay, again, I'm going to treat it like I'm closing a book to get the pieces lined up in the right way. Now you can see I cut these with scissors, so they're not exactly the same size piece. That doesn't matter as long as your drawn lines, your sewing lines, are accurate. I'm going to go right through the crosshairs. Oh boy, and I came up way off on that one, so I'm going to readjust that medium color piece so my pin comes through right on the line. Okay, I'm going to be sewing this seam, so I'm going to pivot my pin and put it in there, bring it back up to the front. I need to put a fresh knot in my working thread, so again, kiss the ends together and push it a little further. Hold your threads together, wrap twice around the needle, and pull. Makes a nice knot. Pretty much right where you expect it to be. Trim that down to about 1/4 inch, and you are ready to sew. You're going to go through the crosshair. Go through the crosshair. Now, if these don't lay real flat with each other at this point, undo the pin and let it stand back up, and notice how much flatter that is now. And then you can pivot your pin, and, well, bonus points if you get that pin to come right back up just about on that line there. Bonus points there. Gives you another spot right along where things can be matched and lined up. That one doesn't quite go perfect. It's okay. Fabrics do tend to move around. Most critical is to get the corners where they need to be. There you go, that's better. And so now I'm going to stitch. You can see it goes pretty quickly. And if you get real comfortable with this, and you can do more than one stitch, more than one scoop at a time, moving the pin when you need to keep it out of the way so you don't poke yourself, and checking the back. Oh, see, now that's gone off a little bit. I'm gonna readjust and check, stitch and check. That's much better. I'm gonna go right on across. Right to where the pin goes in at those crosshairs. Okay, right where the crosshairs are. Going to take this is called a back stitch because you're going back over what you already did, and make sure that needle point comes up right through the crosshairs. Wrap twice, 2 or 3 times, pull through. It's a very similar knot to the one you made to start, and there is your row. Flip it off. And again, I'm going to just sort of pinch it with my fingers so it lays a little bit flatter. Now you'll notice, move my thread out of the way, that this sewn piece is considerably narrower than the way we had those the unsewn pieces laid out. That is because you've lost width in these seam allowances back here. But as long as these stitched lines are in the right place, you know you're doing fine. Okay, so you're going to have 10 just like that, and you're going to follow the same steps but with lights on the outside, so you get 5 that will look like that, with lights on the outside and a dark or medium on the inside. Okay, there's that one. Now this I did sew this earlier. I have used a blending thread. You can see how little of it is actually visible because it blends in. So here's the 4th part of this project. You have all your rows of 3 put together. Now we have to put the rows of 3 together in groups of 3 so that you have 9. You're going to put a row with darks on the outside and light in the middle, and a row with lights on the outside and dark in the middle, face to face. And just like we did when they were simple single pieces, starting on the right if you're right yes, starting on the right, if you're right-handed, you're going to push those seam allowances out of the way. Now you can see all your cross hatches on your top patch. You're going to take a pin, which I ran out of. Here we go. Put it through the crosshatch and put it through the crosshatch on the back of those two fabrics only. You don't want to go through any of this seam allowance that's part of the other piece. Okay. And of course they're being fussy while I'm on camera. Okay. Bend it to the side. Come up ideally right on your lines. Of course, it's being fussy on camera. There we go. I'm going to go to the next seam allowance intersection over. I'm going to take another pin. Do the same thing. Right through the crosshairs. The more you do this, the easier it gets. And bend it up. And one last one, please. Let me have one more pin. There for a moment. And the other pin cushion. A little further away to reach. And last. There it is. Whoop. Crosshairs, and on the back, crosshairs. Bend it over. Put it through right on the lines. Okay, now we're going to sew. Okay, I've already threaded and knotted my needle to save some time. Okay, just like before, you're going to start by going through the crosshairs all the way to the right if you're right-handed, to the left if you're left-handed. Sew your way along, just like before. Check the back. All the way along. I need to get to the part where the seam allowances are. Now I've gotten to where the pin is coming through, so I'm going to switch the pin around so it's out of my way. Pull through. I still haven't, there, I've gone right through the crosshairs. I still haven't touched through these next two fabrics yet at all. Okay. I can take the pin out now. Take a little back stitch. Do that lovely little knot that I showed you before. Okay. Now normally, if it was just the two pieces you were sewing together, you would go and trim this thread off and cut it now. But since you have a longer straight line to go all the way across here, you're going to take your needle and poke it through these two pieces of seam allowance. Again, right on those crosshairs. Down on that side and up on this side. And pull through. Now you're in a position to push all these seam allowances back, again, out of the way. And you're going to take one tiny little stitch right on that line. Check on the other side. Yes, I can see the sparkle. It's right on the line. And I'm going to pull it up. That starts everything, and I'm going to now continue on across. Just like that, at every intersection, until you get all the way across. Just like that. That's the process for every time you have a seam intersection. Will make for a nice tight corner on the front. And let me show you. will make for a nice tight corner on the front. Like that, like that. When you've got the first two pieces together, you're going to sew the third row of 3 on. You can see this one's all pinned and ready. And I will sew that together. It makes what's called a 9-patch unit that will look like that. When you've got all 5 of your 9-patch units together, you're going to take 2 of them and sew them on either side of one of your large plain squares, and you're going to sew one of them with plain squares on either side. So it's the same pattern as the 9-patch pieced block, just with bigger pieces. Now when you're sewing your 9-patch unit to your plain unit, the process is the same. I sew with the pieced side up so I can see what those seam allowances are doing, and I can make that stitch all the way across. When you've got those 3 rows together, you'll put those 3 rows side by side in the same checkerboard pattern and sew them together, and you will have finished your entire pillow front.